Hello, very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Let's begin with this morning's headlines. Union Cabinet clears real estate regulation bill aimed at curbing malpractices and harassment in this sector, seeks to protect consumer interests against builders. Even as RBI keeps key rates intact, SBI, HDFC and ICICI make loans cheaper, cut lending rates by 15 basis points. Political storm breaks out over the killing of 20 sandalwood smugglers in Andhra Pradesh. Tamil Nadu government alleges massive human rights violations, probes ordered. And in Yemen, US boosts arms supplies for the Saudi coalition as the humanitarian disaster mounts. India winds up evacuations after most of its nationals are pulled out. First up on the bulletin this morning, amendments to the Real Estate Development and Regulation Bill 2013 that seeks to protect home buyers from unscrupulous developers has got the nod from the Cabinet. The bill is pending in the Rajya Sabha. The recommendations of the Standing Committee of Parliament on Urban Development and suggestions of various stakeholders have been included after extensive consultations. The proposed initial bill was applicable for residential real estate. It is now proposed to cover both residential and commercial real estate. The bill provides for a uniform regulatory environment to protect consumer interests, help speedy adjudication of disputes and ensure orderly growth of the sector. It provides for the setting up of the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. This bill is expected to ensure greater accountability of developers towards consumers and significantly reduce frauds and delays. It also establishes a fast-track dispute resolution mechanism through adjudication and establishment of a real estate appellate tribunal. Meanwhile, in another major decision, the Union Cabinet also approved a hike of 6% in DA for central government employees. Moving on now, the gunning down of 20 sandalwood smugglers by the Andhra Pradesh Special Task Force yesterday has triggered a political storm, with many slamming the state police for human rights violations. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister O.P. Pannirselvam wrote a strongly worded letter to his Andhra Pradesh counterpart N. Chandrababu Naidu demanding a speedy inquiry into the killings and fixing of blame for possible violations. The National Human Rights Commission has also issued a notice to the Andhra Pradesh government asking for a report on the killings. It said that the killings cannot be justified on grounds of self-defense. The police team had said that it acted in retaliation after being attacked by the smugglers. The police says that there is a long history of the smugglers attacking policemen. Meanwhile, a massive manhunt has been launched to trace the missing smugglers with aerial surveillance underway. Moving on now, the Reserve Bank of India opted to keep the interest rates intact in the first bi-monthly monetary policy for the new financial year. The central bank chose to gauge inflationary pressures before making the next move and give banks more time to alter lending rates to adjust previous rate cuts. Here's more.
RBI Governor Rajya kept repo rate, the rate at which the central bank lends money to banks, unchanged at 7.5%. The RBI also kept the proportion of deposits banks have to keep aside with RBI, that CRR, unchanged at 4%. The RBI has cut rates twice this year in two unscheduled actions outside its policy meetings. However, this has not resulted in most banks passing on the benefits to the customers.
Given that there has been also very little transmission so far from the rate cuts that we effected at the beginning of the year and in March, we're waiting to see transmission taking place.
The central bank also said that it is assessing the impact of unseasonal rains and hailstorms on food prices. The central bank pinned hopes on normal monsoon and expects inflation to remain at its current levels in the first quarter. RBI hopes inflation will moderate to around 4% by August. RBI also sounded hopeful on meeting the 6% inflation target by January next year. Analysts feel RBI's announcement was on expected lines. However, it has disappointed India Inc.
He's also waiting for some data points on the weather conditions and the recent hailstorms which affected some crops to gauge upon how the consumer inflation behaves in the coming weeks.
We feel that there was a room for further relaxation in the CRR, because that would have increased the flow of money in the market, and some of the projects that are needing the huge money would have been the beneficiary of that.
RBI projected economic growth of 7.8% in the current fiscal under the new methodology unveiled by the government earlier this year. The estimated figure is below the government's forecast of growth of 8 to 8.5%. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, after RBI's announcement, State Bank of India, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank reduced their lending rates, while SBI and HDFC cut their base rates to 9.85%. ICICI Bank lowered the rates to 9.75%. The move comes as RBI chief nudged the banks to lower their lending rates. While SBI's rate cut will be effective from this week, HDFC's new rate will be applicable from April 13th. Earlier, none of the big banks, including state-run SBI, had lowered lending rates in response to RBI's back-to-back repo cuts, making it ineffective. Bankers had earlier said that a cut in repo rate does not impact their cost of funding much. Joining me for a chat this morning is senior journalist Priyaranjan. Priyaranjan, thank you so much for joining me on the program. You know, as far as the lending rates are concerned, banks like SBI and ICICI Bank and some of the a couple of other leading banks have ensured that they have cut their rates. But was it necessitated by what the RBI governor said and nudged them towards actually cutting those rates?
Yes, surely, because you see, in the last 3 months, RBI has brought down the policy rates by 50 basis points. But the banks, the transmission of policy rates into bank rates, or the rates at which banks lend, that transmission has not been smooth. And in fact hasn't happened.
At all, yes.
At all. The banks, it seems in the past also, when RBI hiked up its policy rates, banks are more prompt to adjust their base rates up. But when RBI brings it down, it's been seen that the banks are rather reluctant to bring it down. Now, there are of course many factors which are inhibiting the banks from bringing down rates. They have been more active in bringing down deposit rates, but not so active in bringing down lending rates.
Yes.
So, banks have a bad debt problem. Bad debts have been on the rise, and over 2.4 lakh crore of banks have the provisioning that is required and prescribed by Reserve Bank of India are pretty tough. So that exerts even greater pressure on banks. The bank's cost of funds is also, is very high. So that is not helping the banks to bring down rates. Now, with Reserve Bank of India keeping the rates where they are and expecting or asking banks to bring down their base rates first, like the Governor of Reserve Bank of India yesterday did, I think the banks have now started at least doing something. Now 15 basis point is no reduction. If you look at the expectations of both consumers or the home loan or automobile, car loan or consumer loan borrowers and also the industrial borrowers. So it doesn't really meet anywhere their expectations.
Indeed.
Industry wants both consumption demand and investment demand in the economy to increase, and interest rate reduction generally would be good for that. But policy rates going down doesn't really help anybody unless the banks transmit that to actually bank rates.
Otherwise, the banks are the benefactors and not the consumers, really. But as far as some of the industry leaders are concerned, some of the industry leaders expected a cut in repo rate, but that did not happen, and they seemed disappointed. Was there any kind of elbow room, maybe, to reduce it a little bit this time around?
Clearly, with inflation coming down, and because of a host of favorable international factors, basically commodity prices, global commodity prices, global oil prices have helped a rather precipitated reduction in inflation. Wholesale price index in particular.
Yes.
That has given the Reserve Bank of India certain elbow room to actually ease rates. And the Reserve Bank of India has signaled from the beginning of this year that it is on the path of reducing rates. So that's how it has done it twice, 25 basis point each time.
Yes.
And even yesterday, Reserve Bank of India governor has indicated that easing, that monetary stance will be there. But, as we know, for the last 3 months, latest 3 months, food inflation has been on the rise, and food inflation having a high weightage in the overall consumer price inflation. The consumer price index, the inflation measured by the consumer price index, will have a major impact. And then we have a monsoon coming up. There are uncertainties about, one could hope that the monsoon is good, but you do not know. And because of the unseasonal rains and the hailstorms, there has been extensive damages to crops. So in view of that, the Reserve Bank of India is being cautious and would watch the situation for a while. Also, it will watch the government's fiscal performance to see whether the government sticks to the kind of fiscal consolidation that it has proposed in the budget.
Sure. And what can we expect in the near future? I mean, do we expect something on similar lines where the RBI governor waits for the banks first to take a step because they're still lagging behind now, because only some banks have reduced the basis points by 15 basis points. So does he wait for the banks to reduce their lending rates and then maybe cut the repo rate further the next time around?
I think that the Reserve Bank of India, the roadmap that it has a clear roadmap. And if inflation doesn't behave in a very erratic fashion and sort of beats every expectation and shoots up, primarily because of the agricultural sector, that uncertainties concerning domestic agricultural production, we can expect the Reserve Bank of India to persist with reducing rates, because it will keep an eye on the growth factor.
Indeed.
It will like to push growth as well, and inflation seems to be firmly under control. And the Reserve Bank of India governor yesterday also expressed the hope that inflation targets would be met. This time now, starting with April 1st from the current financial year, Reserve Bank of India's primary mandate is to target inflation and keep it within the targeted range of 2 to 6%.
Yes.
And unless if it is not able to meet the target, then it will have to, for 3 consecutive quarters, then it will have to come up with a public statement to explain its failure.
Yes.
So that being the case, the Reserve Bank of India will be very careful, and its primary objective would be to maintain price stability, which is good for growth also.
Indeed, it is good for growth. Remains to be seen what happens in the near future. Thank you so much, Priyaranjan, for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, on that note, we'll slip into a short break now, but still to come. Prime Minister to launch the 20,000 crore rupees Mudra Bank today. We'll have the details for you on the other side, and also much more coming up. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The 14th Finance Commission. Understand the logic, the thinking. Has it given a fair share to the states?
The Commission has tried to protect the interests of both the centre and states.
Watch a special report. A fair share only on Rajya Sabha television.
Tradition dating back centuries. A cultural heritage that inspires and warms at once. Magic that awes, Rajya Sabha Television brings you events that embrace the wonders of India's classical arts. Conversations with the biggest names in the culture and music. Rajya Sabha Television, democracy at work.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to launch the Mudra Bank today. Let's take a look at that and some other news events lined up for the day today on our special segment, The Day Ahead. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will launch the Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency Bank or Mudra Bank in New Delhi today. The Mudra Bank will provide credit of up to 10 lakh rupees to small entrepreneurs and act as a regulator for microfinance institutions. It will have a corpus of 20,000 crore rupees and a credit guarantee corpus of 3,000 crore rupees. The second and final round Padma Awards distribution will take place at Rashtrapati Bhavan today. 12 persons were awarded the Padma Bhushan and 34 were awarded the Padma Shri at the first ceremony. Actor Amitabh Bachchan, Dilip Kumar and Prince Karim Aga Khan are among those who will receive the award today. This year's list comprises of 9 Padma Vibhushan, 20 Padma Bhushan and 75 Padma Shri awardees. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj is on a 3-day visit to Turkmenistan to discuss key bilateral and regional issues including the $10 billion Tapi gas pipeline project. The minister, who arrived in Turkmenistan yesterday, will co-chair the 5th India-Turkmenistan Intergovernmental Joint Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific and Technological Cooperation with her Turkmen counterpart Rashid Meredov. The 15th meeting of SAARC health ministers will be held in the national capital today. Health Minister JP Nadda will chair the meeting, which will be attended by the health ministers of SAARC nations. The meeting will deliberate on measures to strengthen collaboration among SAARC countries and to devise strategies to combat health challenges like AIDS, polio and other diseases. A trial court will continue the hearing in the Manmohan Singh case relating to coal block allocations. In the last hearing, the special court had summoned the former Prime Minister and 5 others as accused in a case pertaining to allocation of Talibira 2 coal block in Odisha in 2005 and asked them to appear before it. The Supreme Court, however, stayed the order on summoning Manmohan Singh on April 1st. Moving on to some international news now. India's rescue mission Operation Rahat to evacuate stranded citizens out of war-torn Yemen is almost complete. A newborn baby was among over 1,000 that have been rescued in the last 48 hours in what is the biggest rescue op undertaken by the Indian Navy and Air Force in recent years. Union Minister VK Singh said only a few hundred remain to be evacuated now.
The centre is looking to wrap up its massive rescue operation in Yemen to pull out stranded Indians amid heavy fighting. A newborn baby was among 1,052 more evacuated from Yemen since Monday. 574 of them were evacuated from capital Sana'a on 3 Air India flights and 479 sailed from Al Hodeidah on board the INS Mumbai. Survivors on board special flights to India recount their tale of horror.
At night they started the targeted points of Saudi fighters. They came the targeted points, the huge sound. We cannot sleep at night, and the shaking all the near, maybe the targeted point is very near us, our house. It will be like very shaking our houses and we scared too much.
There's no water, there's no electricity. The bombing is going on. Where I stay, the mountain was being bombed. The ammunition depot was being bombed. Our embassy, they helped us to get out, yeah, but it took a long time for me to take my 2 kids out, because we had to take visa.
Out of a total 4,000 Indians in Yemen, over 3,500 have been evacuated in the last 2 weeks by Indian Navy and Air Force, often dodging heavy bombing. Union Minister and former Army Chief General VK Singh said the massive rescue operation is almost over.
As of now, we have taken out approximately about 2,500 people. After today's movement, especially with the ship, I expect about 3,000 plus people would have already reached home. our aim is that all those who wish to leave should be able to leave.
The government has also received requests from 26 countries including the US, France, Germany, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh to help evacuate their citizens from Yemen. India has so far rescued over 200 foreigners from 17 countries during the operation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the situation within Yemen shows no signs of easing. The US says that it is speeding up weapons deliveries to Saudi-led coalition bombing Houthi rebels who have taken up arms against the government in Yemen. Meanwhile, continuing airstrikes besides pitched battles at many places have meant the human rights situation sliding from bad to worse. Here's a report.
More arms supplies from the US to the Saudi-led coalition that has mounted massive airstrikes against Houthi fighters in Yemen, supported by Iran. Washington is also to step up intelligence sharing with the anti-Houthi alliance.
Saudi Arabia is sending a strong message to the Houthis and their allies that they cannot overrun Yemen by force. In support of that effort, we have expedited weapons deliveries, we've increased our intelligence sharing, and we've established a joint coordination and planning cell in the Saudi Operations Center.
This video released by the Shiite Houthi group appeared to show an airstrike taking place in the Yemeni city of Sana'a on Monday. It appears to show the moment of explosion and thick smoke rising from the targeted area as residents ran for their lives. Sana'a has turned into a ghost town. But the airstrikes and 3 airdrops of weapons have helped fighters push back the Houthis and their allies from some of their positions in the southern provinces around Aden and to disrupt Houthi supply lines.
استهدف بيت أحد المواطنين وهو آمن هو جهالة منهم صار 6 شهداء وهناك 8 جرحى بعضهم حالتهم خطيرة.
ندي ونستنكر الحادث الإجرامي الذي حدث في قرية بيت بجار من استهداف للمنشآت المدنية والمدنيين.
But it's taken a human toll. Some 550 people are said to have died in the last fortnight. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 2,000 people have been injured over the same period. The Red Cross struggles to push in more relief material. 2 plane loads have been sent in.
نحن بوارد اليوم الاتيان ب 16 طنا من المواد الطبية غدا إن شاء الله إلى صنعاء، وفي اليوم الذي يليه ستأتي شحنة من 32 طن من المواد الطبية، وإنما أيضا من المولدات الكهربائية والقساطل والخيم لكي نساعد المستشفيات في إعادة المياه إلى المستشفيات وفي أيضا توليد الكهرباء لكي تتمكن من العمل.
Humanitarian agencies say Yemen could turn out the worst human disaster the world has seen in decades. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
For more international news and updates, here's our World Wrap. Hundreds of Kenyans held a candlelight vigil in Nairobi on Tuesday night to remember the victims of last week's attack at Garissa University College by Al-Shabaab gunmen. 147 crosses to represent people who lost their lives were planted in the ground before candles were lit by hundreds of people who gathered at the park. Earlier, about 2,500 people marched in Garissa against the Somali militants. 5 men arrested for the blasts have been presented in court. 15 state police officers were killed while 5 others were injured in an ambush by suspected gang members in western Mexico on Tuesday. The attack took place along the Mascota-Las Palmas highway when gunmen opened fire at the state security convoy. This was the second major attack on security forces in less than a month in one of the country's most important states. A high alert was sounded at Russia's Arctic naval shipyard after a massive fire broke out on a Russian nuclear submarine. Plumes of smoke were seen billowing from the vessel. The fire started near the stern during welding work that caused insulation materials to catch fire. A similar fire in 2011 nearly led to a nuclear disaster as flames engulfed a nuclear-powered submarine carrying atomic weapons. The fire has been put out. No one was injured. There were no nuclear weapons reported on board. We slip into another short break here. All the sports updates still to come. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
A new government in New Delhi. New faces.
People are not investing because they are scared of your tax administration.
New thinking.
The auction process is a fair and good process.
We cannot have a one-size-fits-all reform policy.
For insights and perspective.
Judiciary should be more concerned about corruption within itself. The Modi government slogan of अच्छे दिन आने वाले हैं. Soon the people's slogan will be हमारे पुराने दिन लौटा दो.
The biggest show on economic policy. Watch State of the Economy.
आजादी के बाद कैसे बदला परिवेश, कैसे बनी संसद, कैसे उठा देश.
When the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
कौन थे वो लोग जो दे गए हमको शानदार विरासत, लोकतंत्र की मजबूत इमारत. राज्यसभा टेलीविजन.
Let's now bring you up to date with some sports action in our sports beat. The Indian hockey team will look to put their campaign on track as they take on Malaysia in their third match at the Sultan Azlan Shah Cup today. India are without a win in the tournament after a draw and a loss in the first two games, and only a win can keep their final hopes alive. 4 persons have been arrested on charges of manhandling a national woman boxing coach in Udaipur. Hemalata Gupta who has trained boxing legend Mary Kom was manhandled by manager and stewards of a restaurant while she was having dinner with her family. The police say a verbal spat turned ugly over Hemalata's missing mobile phone. FIFA President Sepp Blatter has said that he will meet Palestine football chief Jibril Rajoub to discuss the Palestinian bid to suspend Israel from World Soccer's governing body. Palestine has accused Israel of restricting the movements of their athletes between the Gaza Strip and the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Palestine will submit its proposal at the FIFA Congress in Switzerland on May 28th and 29th. And finally, beach volleyball has been extended to snow volleyball. Here are visuals of the final round of the 6-meeting snow volleyball event at an Austrian resort. I'm going to leave you with these visuals. Have a nice day.